And we are back with the 2005 GTO. This is winter 2021/2022. So this year what we've got on the docket are two phases. We're going to be doing some stuff in the front and then remaining suspension components in the rear. So starting with the front, one of the first things we're going to do is replace that damaged subframe that was seen in a previous video. So I acquired a good used one from eBay, just right here. And then I was kind of thinking in terms of what else would I do while I was doing that, what would make other jobs easier, and that would be this white line front sway bar, and then these kooks. I believe these are 1 3/4, 1 7/8 stepped. They're coated, they are used, and then I've got some catted mids somewhere around here. So, you know, that'll be one of those things where, I mean, obviously it doesn't seem like it's a very common thing to have to replace a subframe on one of these things, and so I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll just figure out how to do that. Obviously there's not like, you know, Google how to replace a subframe. It's probably not a very common thing, but whatever, I'll figure out how to replace that, and then at some point I'll basically pretend that I'm dropping the subframe to install the sway bar. And then if you search on the forum for header installation instructions, probably the first thing you're going to find is the Doric method. And what this method entails is you basically drop the rack, and it kind of makes a mess because it gets fluid everywhere. You got to unscrew the lines, and you got to use like crow's feet, and it's kind of, you know, it's obviously, it's not like that method compared to the other one is daunting. It's all daunting. It's a hard car to install headers on. So that's method one. And then if you continue to search, you'll find another guy suggests dropping the subframe down 10 inches. Now what he does is he gets some bolts that are the same as the subframe bolts, but just 10 inches longer. And he puts them, replaces them one by one, and then you drop the engine down 10 inches, and then it gives you easier access from below to install the headers. And then in that case, you leave the rack installed on the subframe, and you leave the lines all attached and everything, and you just disconnect it from the coupling. And there's some controversy about this. A lot of guys were adamant that that's not necessary and it's better to just follow the Doric method. And I would be inclined to agree. It seemed to me that I would probably, if I wasn't doing the subframe, I'd probably just do the Doric method. But I figure, since I'm already removing that to replace it, and I'm doing the front sway bar and all that, I'll go ahead and just do a video on how to do the quote-unquote drop the subframe method. So that's everything for the front. And then on the rear, I've just got the remaining bushings that I didn't do back here, such as the control arm, and I've got the subframe bushings themselves, diff mount, stuff like that. And then the other thing, I guess I'll make this part of this possibly, because I'm going to be dropping all that stuff anyway. So I'm getting this thing up on these jack stands today, and I crawl under there, and I notice that there's been fluid flinging out of the, I'm assuming it's called the pinion seal. There's just basically fluid all around where the drive shaft goes into the rear differential. So I'm going to have to figure out why that's doing that and fix that too. And while I've got it all removed, I might as well address that too. So yeah, I guess I'm going to start with the front and get all that knocked out. And you know, I'll have to do some research on how to deal with the rear and dropping the entire subframe. And now another note, a lot of guys are saying that you do not need a rear alignment tool if you're going to do poly bushings, because there's not much movement with the poly bushings anyway. And so I'm just going to take their word for it and do it. And then, you know, like, what's the worst that can happen? I need to get an alignment. I'm probably going to get an alignment after doing all this anyway. So to me, I don't know. That's just not that big a deal. Whereas on the front, part of the thread where the guy suggests that you drop the subframe, there's some kind of weird thing he does with coat hangers or welding rods or something where you hook it on a part of the subframe and then you make a mark on the frame. Basically, you want to get the subframe centered on the body. So I'll look more into that when I get to that point and figure out whatever I need to do to mark this thing so that I know I get the new one in centered or in the right spot up here. But I'll just cross that bridge when I get to it, and we'll go from there. So yeah.